My name is William Lunsford. I am from Texarkana, Arkansas. I'm an independent Bigfoot researcher who became an independent Bigfoot researcher quite by accident. My encounter happened at a place called Days Creek, probably 10 miles from Falk, Arkansas, probably 15 miles south of Texarkana. This was a place that I had hunted and fished with my dad ever since I was a young man, or actually a little boy. And when my encounter happened, I was 17 years old. It happened in 1977. And it was probably during April. It was right during the spring. Because I was not a Bigfoot believer, I didn't actually write it down. But I was at the place where I had fished. There was a series of gravel pits down there on the edge of the road. And I had spent many days in there with my dad and with my family. So I was down there this one day. I was a teacher's aide for a coach. I was fixing to play college football, and so I was kind of coach's pet, so to speak. So he was off for that day recruiting, so I was able to take that afternoon off instead of going with teacher's aide, and then I was able to go fishing, which was my passion. So I go home, get my rods and reels, and I go, and I head down to this place, and within 30 minutes I'm fishing. Right then is where I'm in my element, because that's something I really have enjoyed being in the outdoors ever since I was a young man. I've always hunted and I've always fished. Well, I'm at this place, as I said, I've never had any kind of experience down there that was out of the ordinary. So I'm walking up there. There's a place that's called 4 Mile Creek. I walk way across 4 Mile Creek and go into this gas line over there. So the gravel pits line this gas line. So as I'm walking down this gas line, I start to notice that there's a smell that I had never smelled before, but it wasn't unusual because there was always fish, there was always dead animals along in here. They were either eating the fish or else something was eating the animals after they were eating the fish. So there was always roadkill. You would find there's an animal called a swamp jack that it was actually a hare rather than a rabbit. It was about 3 times taller than a regular cottontail, but the coyotes would make just meals out of those. You would find those skeletons at least one per time as you would go down these gravel pit roads. Well, as I noticed the smell getting stronger as I'm walking down towards the end of this gas line, there's one place that I crossed down there. We call it crossroads naturally. And so I'm doing pretty well. I don't have as much time as I wanted, so I'm fishing. It's starting to set in with twilight. And I noticed this smell getting worse and worse and worse as I get towards crossroads. So as I start to cross this gas line, I get maybe probably 10 to 15 feet across the gas line. It wasn't very wide. It was probably maybe 40 yards at the most. And I get this feeling that, man, there's something wrong here. And I'm looking down this gas line, and I can see that there's an extra shadow that shouldn't be there. And I said, but it's twilight. And so nothing is the same at twilight. If you're at a different place than where you are before, then something looks different. So I'm sitting there looking at this, and I thought, your imagination's running wild with you. Well, about 2 to 3 weeks before, I had been down there, and something had actually paced me and chased me out of the woods down this gas line. I got to where I had to go to the trail to get to my car, and it screamed. Well, I thought I did not believe in Bigfoot. I did not believe in the Falk monster. I simply thought it was probably a panther. So I went to the nearest sporting goods store and I bought me a nice Bowie knife and I put it in my tackle box. And at 16 or 17 and bulletproof and at 6'2", 240 pounds, I figured, well, I've got this situation under control. So I start to walk across the gas line again. Like I said, and the smell is just getting stronger. And I'm like, man, what is this smell? Just thinking to myself. And I'm looking down the gas line there, and there's a narrow logging road that goes into this patch of woods. And I'm looking at this one shadow over there, and I'm like, is that natural? Is it not? And I thought, nah, it's your imagination running wild with you. But I equated it to like when someone you see that you know has gotten a haircut, you know something's different, but you just can't put your finger on it. So I'm sitting there and I've got 2 gravel pits across this gas line that I would love to go and fish. And so I'm thinking, you better hurry. So I almost throw caution to the wind, but there was just that sixth sense that we have that wouldn't let me go. Well, about that time, I guess whatever this thing is has decided that it has watched me long enough, because I didn't know it was there. It had a limb. It actually was with its left arm, had pulled the limb in front of his face and was actually eating on these leaves. Well, whenever it stood up, it raised up that limb, and the limb got to about 6.5 foot. This thing continued to stand up too. It got to about 7.5 to 8 foot tall. First thing I thought was, oh my gosh, that's a bear. Well, I knew it wasn't a bear, but that was the only pigeonhole that I could put it in, the only thing that I could relate to. Well, then it walks out on this little gravel road that goes in through there, and it stops right in the middle, and it starts to teeter, and it's just looking at me. Doesn't move its head, doesn't blink its eyes, just sits there and just looks at me. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I've tried to make it a sloth, but there aren't any sloths around Arkansas. So as I said, I couldn't. Well, then I thought, well, you're seeing the fountain monster, but I still didn't believe it. I remember thinking to myself that if you run, you're liable to trigger the predator instinct. I realize that I'm hyperventilating. I know I can't breathe. I can feel the tears kind of going down my face, and I'm thinking to myself, this is how I'm fixing to die right here. I thought, Lord, just let him find my body, take care of my mama. And that was truly what my thoughts were. He walks back to the same tree that he was eating the leaves on, lifts up again with his left hand, pulls the thing up to his mouth, and we call it skinning the cat, where you put the leaves and all the leaves come out. He sits there for a second, he walks in the middle of the road, and then he teeters again, and I'm like, well, here he comes. This is going to be it. So I'm kind of making peace, but I'm also trying to decide, is there any way in the world I can get away from this? And there were some big gravel pits behind me, and I was a very good swimmer, very good athlete. And I thought, well, I'll just go dive in this pit. I'll go underwater. I'll swim underwater till I can get to the other side, and then I'll crawl up and try to run away. Well, about that time, he stops the teetering, and he kind of, like he's going to take a step forward, but he puts that left foot forward. And I thought, this is it. And he wheels on that left leg. He takes 2 steps, and he's off into the woods. I heard him take that 3rd step. I couldn't see him. I couldn't hear him. But I realized right then, I am freaking out. And so I think to myself, well, if you run, what's going to happen? But if he's there, if you don't run, this may be the only opportunity that you get. So I took off running back down this high line. And there was a little gravel road that ran along the side. It wasn't much of a gravel road, but it just kept you from running through grass. I ran back, came to 4 Mile Creek, which I had waited on the way down. Whenever I got to 4 Mile Creek this time, I jumped the creek. I ran up a steep incline. It was almost like a mountain that I had to use a stick to ease myself down before, and I ran across this open field. When I'm in this open field, he's going to catch me right here. So I'm steadily looking over my shoulder, I've got a tackle box and a rod and reel. I'm still looking for him. I don't find him. Then I come to another place in the road there where it's covered. It has a canopy, and I'm like, this will be where he'll get me right here. Well, I'm still looking around, trying to run as fast as I can. I get to the gate. I throw my rod and reel over the gate. I dive through the gate. I get up. I've already got my keys in my hand. I get up. My keys hit their mark the first time I unlock it. I had a little Datsun B210 hatchback. I jumped in right quick. I'm feeling a sigh of relief. I realized this time that I've wet my pants. I realized that I am still crying, and I realized that I'm hyperventilating. I start my car, and there's my tackle box and rod and reel outside. And I was raised a poor kid. Now, like I said, fishing was more than a way of life to me. And so I thought, what do I do? So I had my engine started. I eased up there, got my rod and reel and my tackle box, threw it in the side seat, and I took off driving back to Texarkana. The whole time I'm thinking to myself, he's in these woods, he's going to step out in front of me, I'm going to wreck. I knew I couldn't have handled it. I was still so upset at what I was seeing that I couldn't put into something that I could understand. I mean, like I said, and I probably lived probably 14 to 15 miles away. Probably 10 of those miles I could still hyperventilate and still had tears running down my eyes, just like that right there. Well, I get home, and my mom's there, and she goes, son, what is wrong with you? And she could tell. You know, moms are that way. And she could tell something was wrong. I said, Mom, you're not going to believe it. And she said, well, what? I said, I just saw the fountain monster. And she said, are you sure? And I said, Mom, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. And she didn't believe in the fountain monster as far as that goes. It was just something that you just at that time we kind of dismissed as a legend, as it's called in the movie. So I told her my story, and she can tell I'm still visibly upset. I'm still shaking. You can kind of see right now, even as I relive it, I get very emotional with it. And she said, well, son, I just don't believe I would tell anybody. So I, being stubborn, I told my best friend. And then I told my coach the next day. And he said, well, what'd you do yesterday? I said, well, I actually went fishing. And of course, did you do any good? Well, yes and no. He said, what do you mean by that? I said, well, the fishing was good. I said, I saw the fountain monster. And he just laughed. Because, he was a big burly man, very strong, very muscled up, cool guy as he could be. And he said, well, I think I'm working you too hard, And he said, we're going to have to take a break, And then he had a big laugh at it. I said, I'm serious. And he said, well, man, I can see by the way you're upset. I know you saw something. And that's the worst sentence that somebody can say to me is, "I know you saw something," or "I know you think you saw something." I said, "No, sir." I said, "I saw him." I said, "He's real." I said, "I didn't believe it." And the kind of a neat thing was when the very first sighting in 1971, when the thing had run across the road, one of my classmates, that was his aunt. And so I was steadily kidding him, "Was your aunt still seeing monsters?" And I would laugh, and he was a good sport about it. Well, I said, there's ways that nature has of bringing you back down. And so I kind of got my comeuppance. And so I didn't ever go back for years. And then one of my buddies, I got married, and I was working another job. I met a good friend of mine, still a good friend, and a man named Steve Duran. And so he wanted to see where that happened. He liked to fish as well. I said, "Steve, I'm not going back there." He goes, "Don't worry. He's had a silver-plated .45 that was just beautiful." And by then I had bought me a gun. When we go back down there, man, everything's cool. There's no smell. The wind is blowing. The fishing was great. And I'm about to settle down. We go to this one gravel pit over there, and these gravel pits, the way they are, if you've seen gravel pits, they pile up little levees right there. Well, we're going up this one levee, and he's ahead of me, and he goes, "William Lunsford." He said, "Come here." And I walk up there, and he said, "What is this?" And I just kind of smiled. I said, "Now you know what I'm talking about?" Because Missouri state motto, "Show me." Well, I showed him. He said, "I think we need to go." And I said, "I think you're right." Well, the handprint was about 14 inches. The footprint was about 18 inches. He could put his hand inside this handprint, and he had 2 inches on this side and 2 inches on this side, and about 3 to 4 inches up here. So again, first thing I did was sniff the air to see if I could smell the creature, to see if he was around. I didn't smell him if he was, but I knew that I didn't want to stay there. So we left, and I've never been back down there by myself since then, or with somebody else where I'm not in a truck. I drove down there at one time to 4 Mile Creek, and coincidentally, I got some guys out and was showing where it happened. There were 3 tracks coming up out of 4 Mile Creek, and this is honest truth. And so that has been the last time that I have been down to that area. Now, coincidentally, down the road from there is a place called Mercer Bayou. Mercer Bayou is world famous for Bigfoot sightings, for Sasquatch sightings. And so it was in probably 1985. And I had my 8-year-old nephew with me. Well, when we got there, some of the commercial fishermen dumped a bunch of gar and a bunch of trash fish on the bank, and it was hot. And of course, they were starting to smell and everything. So I had a brand new motor. I had no idea how long it would take to run, but I was taking my nephew fishing. He was proud for me. I was proud, So I come back, and at about dark 30, and I'd stayed just a little bit too long. But I wasn't scared because, I'd never had any kind of encounters down there. But when we got back to the boat, he goes, "Those fish don't stink quite as bad." And I said, "Yeah." I didn't think anything about it. I said, but there were raccoons, there were bobcats, there were skunks, which will eat raw fish. So I didn't think too much about it. Well, I go up there to get my boat. I backed my trailer down, put it there. I pulled my boat onto it. I didn't tie it down. I stopped right on the ramp, and when I did, over here in the corner, and this thing stands up, and he takes off. Well, whenever he does, my nephew goes, "What is that?" And I said, "Get in the truck." He said, "What is that?" I said, "Get in the truck." So he gets in the truck. I drive up to the road about a mile up there. I go to put my boat on the trailer. He says, "You're not getting out, are you?" I said, "Just stay in the truck." He goes, "Don't get out." I said, "Just stay in the truck." So I tied my boat down, and after then I realized that my territory and this creature's territory were going to overlap. And I had to do everything that I could to learn more about him. Even though the first time I saw him, I was going to the library, reading everything I could read, watching every little loop that they had there to try to learn more about this creature. But after this encounter right there, I realized it was a real thing, that I was going to have to find out more about him, or else I was going to see him again, or he was going to see me, and that wasn't necessarily something I was very fond of. So I became an amateur Bigfoot researcher, and I've had the bug ever since then. The more I learned, I was a UPS man for 35 years. I would get to talk to people. To break the ice, I would say something like, "Boy, you live so far out here in the country. If Bigfoot doesn't live out here, it's because it's too far for him to walk." And every now and then they would just laugh, but then every now and then you'd have somebody say, "Well, if you think so, why don't you come back here about dark and see what you think?" And of course, me being a comedian, I would say, "Well, I'm afraid of the dark." And then they would come back with something like, "Well, you should be." And I said, "Oh, I've got to hear more." They said, "You've got the invite. You come back here at dark and you'll see for yourself." So ever since then, I've been a Bigfoot researcher, and I have now seen 15 of the animals. I have got 6 of them, along with a friend of mine named Stephen Hill, on game camera. We put out some game cameras, and so I've got 6 of them on game camera there from just this year. So It's very much changed my life. I'm passionate about it. I love it. People often kid when say, that's how you're going to die, don't you? Well, I'm not, I don't want, to be known as the bravest guy in the cemetery, as far as that goes. But it's something that once you get down there, I'm not an adrenaline junkie. It's just something to myself. I have to have that sighting. I have to prove and learn more and more and more. I've only had one become aggressive, and the rest of them have been, they could have got me if they wanted to, but this one got aggressive with my wife and my son and I one night, and threw a spotlight up on him right as he got into the edge of the woods. He went down, ran for a little bit on all fours, stood up, went crashing through the woods, and actually had another one with him, and you could hear the one that was beside him, ruh, 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 like that. Well, then he took off. So went back the next day, found 5 footprints, and so I'm still hooked, and that's going to be one thing that I will do at least. It's now October. October is one of the great months for Sasquatch. I know for sure the deer are rutting. They chase the deer, and although I don't know for sure, I think they may be rutting at the time too. That may be time they come into heat or whatever for the females, and so I think that probably has a dual role into it. So this is going to be good, and then it's going to filter out maybe about January and February, and then March and April are going to get hot again, and I'm going to be spending a lot of time in the woods during that time right there. And that's not necessarily the end of my encounter, but that's the end of that encounter right there. But that's how I got started, and that's why I'll keep going. So thank you so much.
$8.